Hello and welcome to ARC360's Looking Ahead digital event series. Before starting, we'd just like to say thank you to our corporate partners, the ASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, EMAX, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Merca, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams, as well as our partners, Aztec, Innovation Group, Indasa, the Green Part Specialists, and our latest partner, Casco. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
Well, hello, welcome along everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. A fine lineup today we've got, and we'll come around to those joining us very shortly on the panel. So we've got Sean Harper of S&G Response, we've got Ruth Mooring-Beale of Morelli Group, and we've got Stuart Sandell of Enterprise Holdings. So big thank you once again to our corporate partners and our partners who you can see up on the screen there, make everything ARC360 possible. And obviously specifically this week with our digital event week Looking Ahead, where we've got sessions hosted on Monday. We had 2 on Monday, 2 today, and 2 again on Friday. So keep your eyes peeled for those sessions. Great session lined up today, and before we go too far, as we always do, we like to read our disclaimer. It's up on the screen as well, you can see it. So the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee or other group or individual. Please respect all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. Let's have a look at where we're at. So welcome along everybody, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Great turnout. So again, as always, encourage everyone to put some messages into the chat, so please use that function. It's always nice when you're sat on this side of the screen to know that people are tuned in. Whether you like the comments or whether you disagree on some of the comments, by all means put those messages in there and we will certainly try and keep tabs on that. Anyone who's got any questions or queries as we go, or anything springs to mind, try and fire them in the Q&A panel. You'll see the icons along the bottom of your screen or somewhere about your tablet. So let's come across, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves if I may. So Sean, if I can just come across to you and a quick introduction from yourself, please.
Hi Mark, hi everybody, thanks for joining today. My name's Sean Harper, I'm the Motor Supply Chain Manager for S&G Response. Not as a sales pitch, but just as an introduction to anybody that doesn't know S&G Response. We are a claims outsource specialist based in Wilmslow. We're going into our 11th year and we have just over 100 staff. As I said before, we are a claims outsourcing specialist specialising in motor claims and household claims. I've been with the company for 7 years. 7 happy years, and I look after every aspect of the supply chain, from the repair network to our mobility providers to salvage to engineering, you name it. I've got the brush to sweep it up.
I like that, Sean, but 7 happy years, remember that bit. And Stuart, if we can come across to you, you obviously joined us on a webinar a couple of weeks back, but just remind those who don't know of yourself what you're up to at the moment.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. I think Chris Weeks has been on a lot more of these than I have, but I know I've been on a few of these now. So he said he was like Gordon Ramsay on Graham Norton. He's on that often. I guess that makes me Brad Pitt because he doesn't go on so often. So I'll go with that. So Stuart Sandell, I'm Assistant Vice President for Sales in the UK and Ireland for Enterprise across our replacement rental division and also for our Flexi Rent commercial vehicle division. Been with Enterprise approaching 20 years now. 10 years working in and around the insurance and claims sector. Really enjoyed the session so far this week, Mark, so hopefully we can deliver an insightful one for everyone as well.
That's what I like. Heat pressure on yourself. Thanks for that, Brad. Stuart, sorry. And Ruth, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Most of you know who I am. I'm Ruth Morin-Beale, Sales Director of Morelli Group. I feel like a right old grand dame at the moment, 36 years in the industry, and still going. No plans to retire yet, despite rumours. So I'm very pleased to be involved, and it's been a challenging year for all of us. So it's interesting to share our stories and our experiences. So thanks for the invite.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. You've probably kick-started that rumour mill even more now. We'll talk of retirement. So at least make it through the next hour and we'll be fine. All right. So again, we're just going to catch up on the supply chain, and we've documented things week by week with the webinars previously, and we've touched on various subject matters. We're obviously kind of coming towards the end of 2020, as scary and as that may be, but realistic at the same time. So quite simply, let's kickstart things. What has changed during 2020 from your perspective within the supply chain? And again, think about upstream, downstream supply. How have you kind of been impacted? I'm going to come to you first, if I may, Sean.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Mark. First things first. I think it's crazy that I was sent home from the office the second week into March, thinking that this would be a 2 or 3 week issue, maybe 2 months at the most. And 9 months later, we are still here. It's absolutely mind-boggling, and we're stronger than ever. Another factor is how much this channel has been well received as a great communications tool. So great work to ARC360. Keep up the good work on that. For me, if you go back to the early stages of the pandemic, when we were all focused on one thing, and it was quite simply survival. We went into a turbulent period when it was literally, are we going to be okay? Are we going to have the claims footfall to continue? We're now 8-9 months later into the experience, and it's just possible for me that we might lose sight of what we actually had back in April and May. We shared data, we shared insights in that time, and we all would have thought that was impossible in February. I think it's fair to say we all needed each other before COVID, but we tended to focus on what actually divided us, or what we disagreed about, rather than the common goal. We suddenly recognised that we were part of one ecosystem, and we all had to work together. And I think it's fair to say that we've done that exceptionally well. Yes, insurers, third-party administrators and repairers all have different agendas, and we all have different commercial objectives, but we all need each other. COVID helped us cut through that rhetoric, and I hope nobody is offended by me saying it, but it helped us cut through a lot of the crap that we were dealing with. The robustness of the supply chain still amazes me to this day, and I'm not just talking about S&G Responses supply chain. I'm talking about the whole thing and everyone that's involved in it. It really does amaze me to this day. But, and there is a big but in there, especially the repairers, they've remarkably survived despite reduced volumes, no meaningful increases, and demanding midget network managers like myself who are cutting and thrusting and asking for more each day. Our already strong relationships with repairers have strengthened, and I can honestly say this in a blitz-like spirit of working together through the pandemic and the collaboration of all parties previously working independently. It's been fantastic. So the changes, there's been lots of changes, but for myself and for S&G Response and for our ecosystem of a supply chain, they've been fantastic, Mark.
Well, that's a great start to the webinar. Shall we close there?
See you later. Thanks, everyone.
No, great start, and great to hear, Sean. And I think much of what you've said there, is very much true in terms of how the industry has kind of evolved and at the same time, pulled together. And we are focusing on different conversations and different areas now, very much so. Ruth, we've not heard a great deal from the world of distribution, in fairness. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about 2020 and what it's meant from your side of the fence.
Well, we had our virtual management conference last week, which should have been at Celtic Manor, and unfortunately was a very long 10 hours of our life spent on Zoom call all day. But we asked our managers and management team to tell us how COVID has affected them. And I think it's fair to say it's been what the Queen would describe as an annus horribilis. for most people. I think those that are on furlough had their challenges. We've still got staff on furlough. A lot of them that came back found furlough brain very hard to mix with work brain. We've had a lot of challenges on that side of it. I mean, as a board of directors at the beginning of lockdown, we spent 2 months just trying to work out if we were going to have a business at the end of it, try and source as much PPE as possible, because that was about the only thing we were selling to 90% of the customer base. Our turnover dropped to 10% on our main business, so we lost 90% for March, April, May. It has come back very quickly, much quicker than we predicted, but that's largely because of the work that we'd put in before COVID, a new business that was scheduled to join us that has joined, so that's good. But the majority of our main customers are still not up to pre-COVID levels. So, we've managed to get back and gain some business, which is good. Our online business, which is Slim's Detailing, went absolutely mental. And that's the only team that's worked absolutely solidly throughout, because everyone was at home cleaning their cars. And it's literally doubled and kept there. So that's been a real positive. I think from our management perspective, it's been very tough to try and manage people that are in work and have had to work all the way through. We went down to 4 branches and supplied the whole country from 4 branches using couriers, etc. But there's been real positives from it. We've changed a lot of our working practices. We've been able to tidy up a lot of stuff that maybe we thought about for a long time and hadn't had the balls to do. We've changed the way that we deliver to a lot of customers. We've changed some of our terms of engagement with certain customers, and by and large customers have received that very well. They understand that. So it's allowed us to streamline and to make some changes that have been really healthy for the business. In terms of supply chain, our supply chain has been awful. It's been very, very hard to get product, and it's getting worse, and that's now coinciding with the Brexit situation. So all of the delays that we've had so far are now butting up to the delays that we've got coming with Brexit, and supply is going to be very, very challenging over the next few months. So that's our next challenge, really. But if you could say that this type of year has been good for our business, 30% of our thought process is that it's been very good. 70% has been shit. But it's just one of those, isn't it? So but we're still here. We've been really, really proud of the way that our staff has responded and cracked on and just done what has been necessary. Really, really shown the men for the boys, which is great. So it's good.
Amazing. Wow, great insight, Ruth. Thank you very much indeed for that. And COVID brain, I won't forget that one. And as I say, let's hang on to that 30% of it's been good for the time being, and we'll definitely come back to Brexit soon. Stuart, again, bit of an insight from yourself. I know we've spoken about it before, but again, those who weren't party to that, can you give us an idea?
Yeah, I think so. I echo a lot of the things that have already been said as well, so I'll try not to cover the same points. I think one thing, your question's what has changed, but I think as you reflect back, we have to also focus on things that actually haven't changed. And I think some of the key things, and really, I think what makes this whole industry amazing is the people that's in the industry. Ruth just touched on the team at Morelli there, but I think I'll take that a step further. And, I know we're immensely proud of the men and women in our business who really are on the front line. They're out there every day, servicing our customers, but that goes right through the industry, whether that's in the body shops, repairers, estimators, whether it's the parts supply delivery guys or the salvage agents. There's an amazing group of people who, to Sean's point, have really come together and shown a tremendous amount of resilience to what has been thrown at us this year. And I think, if you could have seen what was coming, you'd have said, wow, this is going to be really kind of catastrophic. But I think the level of resilience the industry's shown by, I think, sticking to some of the core fundamentals, which has made it great in the first place, which is looking after customers fantastically and focusing our attention on them, looking after our employees really, really well and focusing on them. And, maybe we talked about making our environments safe for people to work now. It's a slightly different tone of that conversation because we're talking about sanitisation and social distancing and But you know what? I still think about our employees and employees that I see, and you can still see them smiling through those face masks and getting on with it. And I think we should always just glance back and look at what hasn't changed that's kept us going through amongst all the things that ultimately have changed. And, I mentioned a couple of things, and, clearly from a customer serving perspective, protocols have changed, keeping a distance from people, how we hand vehicles over, in the same way repairers having to have different sanitization processes for when they finished repairing somebody's cars. But I think if we take it to a slightly more macro level, and we're looking up and downstream again in the supply chain, I think the biggest and most positive change that I've certainly seen, and what my team talk about the most, is the amount of collaboration and the improvements in communication between us and our suppliers and us and our account customers. Sharing of information's been way better than we've seen before. Sean touched on claims kind of dropping dramatically, but giving us line of sight on what that looks like, so we can start to kind of predict and plan for our businesses in the same way that repairers. So whether that's looking at the CAPS data, whether it's looking at claims data from a certain insurance company and reflecting your own information, I think there's been much better sharing of that knowledge and insight and information. And for me, whilst that's not a change because it happened, it's just better than it was. And I think if we look at what we learned through lockdown phase 1 or 1.0, as people have kind of coined it, and that reaction we had to all make, I think that's made us all better businesses now for lockdown part 2, and more prepared and ready to deal with it. So I think that's my big learning, is communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And certainly a subject that's been touched upon many times in the webinars in previous weeks and things that we've done. And I think you're absolutely right. It's great that those conversations are now taking place. We seem to be far more transparent as an industry, and more happy to communicate, the good as well as, the bad in some cases. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Now, from a customer relationship perspective, Sean, I'll come back to you on this one. What specifically from that side of things, how are things different there? What new challenges, so obviously, namely volume is a key part of your world and all of our worlds, in fact. But how are they being addressed with all stakeholders in mind?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mark. Without a doubt, relationships are much closer. As I mentioned before, the sharing of information over the last 8-9 months has been on a different level. And dare I say it's unprecedented. But as a business, that's led us to ask why. Why is it taken this level of pandemic and problem to actually share that level of information? Again, as I said before, whether we like it or not, we're all interconnected. Insurers need repairers, full stop. They really do. Insurers can't build or repair vehicles, and repairers need insurers. No one repairer could supply for themselves the collective volume the insurers can. They just don't have the buying power, whether that's based on geographical buying power, commercial buying power, or working capital cycle. Repairers can't also underwrite. So it's a partnership. For me, that has evolved more than anything over the last 8 to 9 months, Mark.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sean. And Ruth, from your perspective, I mean, again, I've seen a comment come in there in terms of Brexit, and again, we will come back to that. But in terms specifically to customers, how have you kind of been working through it, these challenges with your stakeholders? And, are these changes here to stay, do you think, or has it all been kind of temporary and we'll move on when volumes get back to some sort of normality?
I think because our business is based on relationships, the biggest challenge for us when we shut 8 out of 12 branches was to supply our customers at a consistent level of service that they would expect in Bodmin, for example, as they would in Birmingham, that was open around the corner. Our central distribution depot in Castle Bromwich was supplying 6 branches, Enfield was supplying 2 branches. Norwich was shut. We have to get used to regional differences in accents, which is quite hard. It's much more of a challenge than most people think it is. And all the calls were coming into a small team of people. So they had the opportunity to build up that relationship with those customers that were still open and keeping that relationship going on a needs must basis. So that 10-20% of customers that were open got to know those people. So that was really important from our side of things. And then as things opened up, they got back to their previous relationships, etc. But actually, I think it was quite a bonding exercise for all of us. And it's certainly that those of us that were involved in doing stuff that we don't normally do, like delivering, packing, warehouse work, we all did it. I did it. All of our directors were there running stock all over the country, in the warehouses, packing orders for couriers, etc. We learnt an awful lot about our business that I think in normal circumstances you don't have time to do. And I think our customers really appreciated the fact that we could work that closely with them. Some of the changes are going to continue. Some of the customers that we supply long distance by courier will carry on doing so because it's more cost effective for us and for them. Some of the smaller customers will suffer as a result of that because there will be handling charges that will become part of our normal practice because we've got to. But again, I think because the world has changed and the world has sort of moved on to couriers and a different way of supplying, people are more used to that and are prepared to sort of absorb that. I think Chris asked a question about Brexit and the delays that's going to entail. For us, the biggest challenge at the moment is bringing product in through the ports. We've got, in certain cases, 4 to 5 week delays on standard product that we've ordered currently without going into the Brexit scenario. The ports are in chaos. We've had deliveries that have been on the sea for 3 or 4 months that have now been in port for a month that we can't get out. And it's standard product. Where we're lucky is that most of the product is, for example, if 3M are out of stock of a compound, we can give an alternative product. So it's rare that we would be out of stock of anything that we couldn't substitute for something else. Our concern is on the paint side of things, that if the paint companies experience the same challenges getting tinters and clear coats, etc., that is going to be more of a challenge. At the moment, we're not experiencing that with the paint companies, and we've put enough orders in that hopefully it'll get us through that hump at the beginning of next year. So we've taken advantage of pre-ordering. And to be fair, the paint companies have been very supportive and very helpful trying to work us through that process. It's people like UPOL and 3M and some of the consumable suppliers that are really finding it challenging with raw materials. And a lot of that's coming out of China, for that's been delayed. So we're all having to become much more global about the way we look at our market and look at alternatives. But as I said, most distribution will be able to provide alternatives to most things, and customers, I think, are okay with that as long as we communicate. And it's back to your point earlier about communication.
Fascinating.
So
Fascinating.
I can't give a time frame on how that will affect key to key times, but we will try to substitute rather than delay, if that helps.
And do you, again, going back to the Brexit point, do you kind of forecast a period of time that these things may impact on? Obviously, probably very much dependent on the type of agreement we get, or is it purely just logistics at the moment that's holding everything up? I think we're all in the dark. I mean, I was asked to go onto a panel to talk about Brexit a few weeks ago with Chris Weeks, and I declined because we don't know. Until we know what the deal is, we can't say for sure. We're having weekly seminars or webinars with our suppliers, but they don't know until the deal's done or not done. And I think that's the difficulty. We're working on the basis that there will be a 6.5% tariff on most of the products coming in, but who knows? It could be a lot more than that. So, and delay wise, it's pluck it out the air. Yeah, absolutely.
So, we don't like to be that vague, but we haven't got a choice at the moment.
No, and I don't think anyone, begrudges you that. We've had a few of those. We've had crystal ball moments throughout this year, really. So yeah, everyone's kind of second guessing at the moment, and we're now on to a second guessing of different cases scenarios. And what are we, 5 or 6 weeks out? And the truth will be told, I suppose. All right, so going to move on to a little bit of technology now, and Stuart, I'll come across to you. So, every business has adopted technology, whether it be kind of, this functionality, webinars, conferences, Zooms, Teams, you name it. How is it kind of influencing your respective operation? How's it benefiting your supply chain? Do you think it's kind of temporary? Will we go to a sort of a hybrid? We've just spoken off air about events and looking forward to getting back to those physically and stuff. But are we in a kind of different space now in terms of the way we communicate as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, it covers so many areas, technology, Mark, and I think it's evolutionary, not revolutionary, definitely. But I do think that it is being accelerated by what's going on right now. So I think there's a few different aspects. So a couple of things. You've got technology that's influencing and shaping customer outcomes and customer journeys, so claimants' journeys, which were all in the pipeline. Lots of businesses, particularly the insurers, have talked about their digital strategies, and they've been talking about these for a long time. But I think more of those are coming to life and fruition through necessity now. And if I look close to home, and we touched on this one before, where we look at our own sort of customer service and customer journey, we already had a plan and a strategy outlined around how we were going to move the journey of the customer to be more automated, to be more digital, to have more things like automated access to vehicles. And it's accelerated something for us called low touch, no touch, which is where drivers will be able to do most of their rental transaction, if not all of it, before they ever come to the branch. They'll have like a boarding pass style document on their phone that they'll be able to show to get into a vehicle. And it's not long before that the phone will be able to get you into those vehicles without even needing to see a person. And we've already got some of that with things like Car Club. So capitalizing on those assets and linking them to those new customer journeys, they aren't things that are just a flash in the pan because of COVID. They were all coming. I think it's just an acceleration side of things. And I think when we look into the wider supply chain and how we interact with that, I think technology is leading everything there. So whether it's the systems and tools that we use, that we have at our own disposal, that we have in our own kind of family of brands, whether it's using the connections like the CAPS connectivity to make sure that all the right information is shared with the right people quickly and speedily. It all focuses back on, again, great customer journey and great journey for anybody who's part of that claim, whether that's a repairer, an insurer, whoever it might be. So again, back to that communication point. And I think that all then starts to come together more around the future of the car. We've got connected vehicles landing, on people's driveways now. The dawn of e-call and a-call is upon us. It's not something anyone could avoid or hope doesn't happen. And for us, connected vehicles are going to be more important to our fleet. Simple things like getting a fuel or a mileage reading from a vehicle, an accurate one without having to actually go and check it, and doing that instantly. And then working with OEMs and other parties in handling those emails and the e-notifications that come out of vehicles. So again, we've just done a partnership with BMW where we're providing services to those guys. It all starts to come together. So is it gradual? Yes. I just think it's going quicker than anyone expected it to.
Yeah, great summary there. Yeah, absolutely. And kept my eyes peeled on the BMW announcement last week, I think it was, wasn't it? It looks like a great project to be involved in. Sean, same sort of question to you. Are we now in a different space in terms of how S&G communicates upstream, downstream with its supply chain?
Yeah, very much so. I agree with a lot of what Stuart said there. The technology and the tech side of things, it's evolutionary, but I think the pandemic has been one big kick up the backside to fast track it. For myself and for S&G Response, technology, it's an enabler. It's a way to actually reduce time, and it's a welcome way to reduce time, to reduce the claims journey and to give a better customer journey for the client. The problem that people like myself have got is you need real good whiz kids to put that technology in place and to make it simple and to make it achievable. So it's huge. Technology for me, okay, if you take it from the supply chain perspective, It's all about making sure that the right repair gets to the right repairer, be it a mobile repairer, be it a VM approved repairer, be it HGV repairer. With somebody else within the business, it might be something totally different. It might be looking totally at just NPS and the net promoter scores and the customer service journey. But what we're all trying to do is give a better outcome for the client that we're all dealing with and that we're all sharing with. So, our view of technology is now being shared by our wider supply chain. So, if you look at repairers and what repairers are doing now, they're embracing technology. Okay, at the beginning of this journey, if I'd have said to my volume repairers that I wasn't going to come and visit them in the next 3 to 6 months, they'd have been secretly happy, but they'd have been like, how can we keep this relationship going? And how do I know whether I'm delivering what S&G Response wants? We now do Zoom performance reviews. We do everything via Zoom. If something doesn't smell right or taste right, then we follow up with a physical visit. But the feedback from the supply chain has been incredible. Firstly, they've adapted to it and they've taken it on board. And secondly, the amount of time and money that we're saving them by not actually turning up and adopting technology is huge. So it's evolutionary, but it's huge, Mark. It really is.
And Sean, don't speak bad of yourself. I can't imagine any body shop didn't want you to turn up on their doorstep, please.
It's true, my friend.
Okay, I believe you.
Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying this webinar. Just a quick thank you once again to all of our corporate partners and partners on screen now. Now back to the show.
And Ruth, I can see you nodding away there on a few points. Now, yeah, distribution. How does technology impact distribution? It's always been a very sort of personable side of the business. How does it work for yourselves?
Well, I think there's two areas. Obviously, stock management, because a lot of our customers are now self-managed for stock. We still send our merchandisers in and they take stock orders, and they're still doing that currently. But it's obviously in a very socially distanced way, and that it's very difficult for them to do it on that basis. So we're moving a lot of our customers across to self-managed stock with our own portal for stock management. So that's where technology is going to help us and help the customer. It doesn't substitute for people going and working face to face, but a lot of our reps, we've trained our reps now to work on Zoom, and even though a lot of them are still flexi furloughed, they're keeping in touch with customers on Zoom calls and making sure that they're doing our business reviews, for example, on Zoom, and having the regular contact, which has been fantastic. It's harder because it means you've got to really put that time in. You can't walk around the workshop and just follow somebody around as they're doing their normal job, but you've got to actually have somebody sitting down and paying attention, but you can get it done in 10 minutes instead of a couple of hours by the time you've spoken about football and golf and everything else. So, from our side of things, it's great. And for our managers and our staff at the branches to keep in touch is really good as well. So, yeah, I think the technology is really important, and it's improving all the time on our side of it. So, yeah, whilst we're still a people business, we use the technology to make sure that we keep our relationships going.
Great stuff, thank you. And a question's come in about the people sort of technology balance. Paul Sell, what do you feel is the optimal balance between the involvement of people, expertise and technology? Just how much would you want to automate change with technology solutions? Stuart, you want to pick that one up for me?
Yeah, I think I've said this before on these calls. I don't think you can have them independent of each other. So I think, if you've got great technology, you still need great people to execute parts of the journey or parts of the supply chain. And I think you need the balance between the two of them. And I think that's for every business to consider how much you automate and how much you don't. And also about really listening to your customer and what their wants and needs are. We live in a world right now where one person is completely happy with everything being on their smart device and doing it that way, and the other one still wants to go down the bank and withdraw their money kind of thing. So we have to find that happy medium, and you can't do that with a single technology only or people only approach. So I think you've got to find that balance between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, I think you did reference that on the previous webinar you're on, and it seems to be very much a shared sentiment. One without the other simply doesn't work, and obviously key in Ruth's world as well. Now, Sean, going to move on to vehicle technology. And by the way, Sean, you're coming in for a lot of compliments on the chat there, S&G. So bravo for you. So, in terms of vehicle technology, Stuart's already kind of referenced it. How does it sort of impact? What are the implications on your world? How does it change the dynamics, again, upstream, downstream supply chains for you? And how are you kind of, working with all stakeholders to navigate?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And, I think, the vehicle technology side of things together with, societal changes have got to be, viewed together and considered together. If you look at what's happening with home working at the moment, and the average family, probably has two and a half cars. Okay, do they need that with working at the home? With working at home, I don't think they do. I really don't. I think as vehicle technology advances, going back to what we were saying before about making sure that the right repair gets to the right repair shop with the right equipment and the right training and the right approvals, it's absolutely critical. I think there was a release last week saying that petrol and diesel, it's all aiming to be removed by 2030. I think I might be wrong, I might be right, but again, you've got to view that. What we're trying to do at S&G Response is like I said before, make sure that the right repair goes to the right place, but also push ourselves and our referral sources to make sure that that repairer is actually rewarded for investing in what they need to invest to keep up with the vehicle technology. So it is going to change massively, but I think there is a big appetite within the industry and especially within our supply chain to keep up with that and to move with it as it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, the deadline you referred to, 2030 and then 2035 for petrol hybrids to then sort of be phased out. So and we're not far off, 2021, just around the corner, 9 years in theory. I mean, there's a long tail, obviously, of petrol and diesels in the market, but it is going to change gradually. And Ruth, how does vehicle technology impact distribution? There's certain areas that you're looking at and kind of, really giving consideration to in terms of supply of product or just how you operate, how it functions?
Definitely. I think it's not so much from the traditional products, the paint and materials. It's more from the equipment side of things where, we've got a large part of our business is driven by equipment sales. So, we've seen a massive spike in things like products to handle electric vehicles, so body hooks, battery carriages, battery lifts, that kind of stuff. And that's going to get even, much more technological over the next few months even. We've been talking to some of the manufacturers, because obviously our market space is built around the motor manufacturers and our links with the motor manufacturers. So we have an insight into the type of technology that's going into the vehicles, and we can see the type of equipment that we're going to need to put in place and what body shops are going to need to invest in. And it's huge. There's going to be a massive change in the way that body shops operate around electric vehicles, which has happened over the last 2 or 3 years, but it's going to get even more stringent, I think. And also the substrates that vehicles are made with, change the welding processes, changes, the way that you have to handle an aluminium vehicle as opposed to a steel vehicle, etc. So there's a lot of changes that we're absorbing and passing on, and it's a big part of our business.
Yeah, and it's certainly a conversation we struck upon on Monday afternoon session where we discussed kind of segmentation of the market. And again, general thought mindsets are the industry is going to, segment by brand, capability. In fact, there were 5 or 6 kind of areas where people's sentiments lie in terms of how the industry will segment. And obviously much of that driven by technology, construction of modern day vehicles. So kind of coming back, if you like, to more immediate term, Ruth's already touched upon Brexit from her perspective. Sean, any sort of thoughts around that? The external influences. Obviously, we're not through COVID yet, as promising as the signs may seem for vaccines and things. We've got Brexit looming. We've got the potential economic outfall of 2020 still to come. How are you working with supply chains to kind of support one another through this? Really,
we're just trying to work as closely as possible with them, Mark, to understand their business, and for them to understand our business, so we can get the best from each other. Which sounds cliched, but it's genuinely true. If you look within the industry, it's a common trait for things and people and businesses to be tagged. Insurers are tagged for only caring about the bottom line. Accident management companies and TPAs just being the middlemen, and repairers, being tagged as a necessary evil when they're not. The point is that all the perceptions are wrong, okay, and we each play a role, and the importance of that role is absolutely huge. Each part of the industry needs the other. Insurers can't exist without repairers. Repairers can't exist without insurers. For ourselves, AMCs, claims management companies, are we the middlemen? Well, yes, we probably are, but certain parts of the market actually need a middleman to actually survive and help it. If you look at rental companies, self-insured fleets, MGAs, insurtechs, even some of the smaller, motor underwriters, COVID, Brexit, etc. They're just disruptions to the normality of the market. It's the construction of the market that's the important thing, and we all will survive. We've just got to appreciate each other a little bit more and have that level of empathy, which I honestly believe we've all shown over the last 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about how the conversation seems to have matured in the industry, and that's not to sound sort of contradictory or anything, but we just seem to be, as an industry, talking about these things far more openly. And yeah, you're right. Insurers, whether it be accident management companies, repairers, one without the other simply doesn't work. So yeah, there's space there for everyone, absolutely. And Stuart, from your point of view, kind of again the more immediate term with these influences at play at the moment, how are you kind of working your way through it with all your suppliers, etc.?
Some of the things Sean just said, actually, I mean, it's hard not to repeat. They're very similar, but COVID was kind of the no deal we didn't want anyway, wasn't it, really? It kind of brought like a Brexit type scenario that no one was expecting, no one had planned for, and I think way worse than anyone would ever expect a Brexit to be. So there's a little part of me that, without trying to make light of anything like Brexit, sort of says, well, we're kind of getting our way through this enormous global pandemic. Brexit's kind of like a pimple in comparison, really. Coming at the same time doesn't help, but I think we've got so many lessons learned through COVID that will help us through the inevitable challenges that will come with Brexit. And Ruth talked about challenges at the ports and things like that have happened because of COVID. Well, they were all the challenges at the ports we were preempting to happen because of Brexit. We look at things like the supply of new motor vehicles into the UK market. Well, we've had that challenge come on us because of COVID, because the assembly of vehicles, whether it was in this country or across Europe, slowed down or changed because of their supply chain challenges, which slows the flow of vehicles in. They were things we were expecting because of Brexit. And again, in years to come, when we all reflect back on this whole situation, we'll probably go, well, our Brexit plans and the things we'd started to think about have really put us in good shape for COVID. So therefore, when Brexit came along, it was kind of the same. And to Sean's point, I think that collective will this industry's shown to survive, to talk, to be there for each other, I think that will just continue through this period. And, I think it will just be part of the bumpy road that's ahead of us. But as part of the bumpy road we've been on. So I think that's really where my view is on it. And the other thing I would say is, one of the things that's really important to everyone through all of this is cash, and paying people on time and delivering that is really important wherever you sit in that supply chain, whether you're the customer or whether you're the supplier. It's important that we get people money into their banks, and if we can keep businesses liquid and are moving along, that really, really helps and keeps people resilient and sustainable. So, that's one thing I think is incredibly important.
Great stuff, Stu. And that leads us nicely to Ruth in terms of, are we better versed for Brexit and these things right now? And Stu's probably just touched on it. As distribution, arguably, you often hold debts and credits and things like this. Is it, how are you sort of holding up, if you like, or preparing for these eventualities?
Well, I think like everybody, the industry imploding between April and June, March and June didn't help us in terms of our cash flow. We were desperately hoping that the government's support would kick in, which it did. Without furlough, I don't think we'd be in the same place as we are now. Not only did customers' businesses close, they closed their accounts departments. So, we struggled to get cash in. I have to say that, over a 2-month period, the majority of 95% of our customers got back and paid their bills and were back on track. So we were very pleased about that. I think that's the biggest challenge coming forward. I have a suspicion that January to March is going to be a very difficult period for the body shop industry. I think as the VAT quarter and the rent quarter kicks in, then we will see some body shops in trouble, particularly those that haven't used the furlough sensibly. I think a lot of body shops have not used furlough, even in the flexi furlough, in a way that we would have anticipated, and they've gone back to work with full steam ahead. And I worry for those businesses, because I think with careful management, they probably could have used the furlough to support their business in the way that it was intended. And I've spoken to a number of different work providers who've had the same view, that there should have been more thought about that around the industry, and more discussion about how to use the furlough in the right way. Because if volume isn't there, then you don't need all the staff that you've got, but you kind of expect to work to the same level with work in progress. So we are concerned that there's going to be a bit of a kick in the first quarter of next year.
Yeah, and I think it's, as we kind of documented things over the period of time, the timeline we used to look at, right, what's everyone's kind of key timeline that they're looking to, it just kept moving further backwards. November obviously was at one point, the key timeline with the end of furlough. Now that's moved. I think sites are now set, as you rightly say, early next year, beginning of March, when the furlough theoretically ends once more. So it'll be interesting to see.
My advice to body shops is really have a look at your staff, have a look at who you need and who you don't need, particularly through December and January, when everyone's predicting that there's going to be a drop off of volume, and use the furlough to put some money back in the business. Even if you're only flexi furloughing and putting people part-time, there has to be a benefit to everybody to be doing that. I don't want my sales staff, or majority of them, to be flexi furloughed. I'd rather they were out selling, but at the moment it's the most sensible thing for us to do, and take advantage of the support that's there. So that's my recommendation.
Sound advice, Ruth. Very sound advice. Sean, I'm going to jump back to you if I can now, and kind of still working on the theme of specifically of repairers. How are you kind of working with them to create supply chains that are fit for the future? So, let's go beyond March next year. What does a future relationship look like? And interestingly, there's kind of a question come through here as well, which coincides with that. How do repairers kind of alert you or make you aware of their capabilities, really? Is this all part of it moving ahead, that two-way communication?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to try and answer that on two levels: high level and a working level. So, at high level, we aggregate collective volumes that would normally, that wouldn't normally be accessible to individual repairers. That comes at a commercial price, but it's part of a blended mix of work, which again, individual repairers would not have access to. As you know, different customers have different drivers, whether that be repair costs, cycle time, customer experience, or overall claim cost, but we do provide a moderating service to get that additional volume into our repair shops. That is the first and foremost thing that we're trying to do to help repairers. That's at a high level. At a grassroots level, on a day-to-day basis, we have never ever work so close with the supply chain to come up with initiatives to assist them and to assist and help ourselves. So be it from, I don't know, say for example, amnesty days, which we had one yesterday, which is as simple as opening the door to absolutely anything that the repairer wants to discuss. So sorry, yeah, it was actually yesterday that we opened the door on that. And we had 60 things posed to ourselves that we dealt with and managed and put to bed, to training days whereby we might have a new scheme that's going live that we think is quite similar to something else that we've launched previously. We would send electronic communications and acceptance of terms and acceptance of procedures and process. We don't do that anymore. We actually sit with the repairers. We will have training calls. We'll have acceptance via training with the work provider on the call to make sure that it's okay, to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose for everybody. So the whole ethos of what we're trying to do now is obviously aggregate volume, but also make life easier for the repairer. That is our ultimate goal for the coming 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 months.
Great stuff, Sean. Amnesty Day, I like that. I bet that's an interesting or an insightful day to be part of. Stuart, same question to you. You know, how are you kind of, as enterprise and your various brands, you know, creating that supply chain that is really fit for the future, whatever the future kind of may look like?
Common themes again, Mark. Technology, I think, leads the way, making sure that the way we communicate up and downstream, but particularly to repairers. Now, whether that's fixing one of our fleet cars or fixing a car of one of our customers, so an insurer or a broker, or whether it's when we're connecting with them around where we have an interest in the mobility. So if we've got a mutual customer who we're hiring a car to, but the repair's being done, I think the more we can carry out processes and transactions and interactions on technology that remove some of the waste and failure that we've seen historically. And that's getting better and better. And that's been a journey we've been on for many, many years now. It's not a new thing. So I think that will just continue, that connectivity piece, integrating everywhere we can and making integration really simple. I think if you go back a few years, it was doing an integration with someone was like, you know, you needed some heavy lifting on the IT side, and like through APIs and what have you, that's a lot easier. I think as a work provider to insurers, ensuring we give a good mix of work, you know, balance across our fleet business and insurer business. And then very specifically down at the repairer level, you know, Chris Weeks mentioned on the session this morning about how there are a lot of things that he had in his agenda and his plan that clearly COVID kind of got in the way of and didn't get to. And one of the things he talked about was courtesy cars. And then that's something that we still feel passionately about and want to support repairers on finding alternative ways of operating a mobility fleet, whether that's mixed ownership models, whether that's using things like car clubs, whether that's coming out of all vehicles and, you know, using a rental or an outsourced type model. And I think that goes back to that collaboration piece. And, you know, we heard during COVID a lot of repairers who, you know, had a lot of cars sat around not doing a lot, but they were still paying for those vehicles. And that doesn't fit very well. And if volumes are going to continue to be very unpredictable, you don't want those kind of costs sitting there and hanging around your neck. So I think that's another place where we're going to really be focusing our energies and efforts on listening to and working with the repair community.
Great stuff, Stu. Great insight there as well. Ruth, I jump across to you. We've got, what have we got? 7 minutes remaining. So we'll have a little sort of whistle round. But based on what we know now, and, you know, again, it's all likely to change at any given moment. But how different do you believe your role, Marelli's role, will be in the supply chain in the future, in the years to come?
Well, I'd like to think that it won't be that far different, but or different in the role in the supply chain, that we still have a very valid role. I think the way that we operate will be different. I think that, again, technology is going to come far more into play. I think we are going to have to get used to being socially distant with virtually everybody. And I think that's here to stay. I think sanitisation is a huge thing. We've expanded our range of those sorts of products dramatically, and I think customers are adopting that now, and that's not going to change. And I think the way in which we analyse stock, and the way that we supply people is going to change. We should reduce the number of times that we deliver to people. The number of touch points that we have for everything is reducing, and the technology that we're putting into our branches to enable that is also quite key, because our warehouse management systems are reducing the amount of handling that we have to do, which is good from a cost perspective, but also good from, you know, a general duty of care type of perspective. I think that there are a number of changes that will come into play. One of the questions that was asked on the chat was, do we think that customers should top up their stocks at the moment and put more in stock? We don't see a need to do that. We work on a consignment stock basis to most of our large customers, and we work on a week to 2 week stock. So there should always be a buffer, and there should always be the opportunity for us to provide an alternative product. So, you know, and we would always get notification if we're going to be out of stock of a key product. But even when it comes to clear coats, etc., the paint companies won't want to hear it, but there's always an alternative there. So we should be able to supply that. So I don't see any need, and I certainly wouldn't want to see a rush on product, because I just think that will make it worse for everybody. I will end up taking it back in 3 months' time. So, you know, it doesn't seem to make any sense, but rest assured that we'll manage that in the best possible way. So, yeah, I think the changes are here to stay, and we've got to continually adapt to what's thrown at us. I don't think that the vaccine is going to make a massive difference to our part of the market for quite some time, and therefore we're going to have to cope with the fact that COVID is going to be around for quite some time. So, you know, for the next 8 to 9 months, I think we're in this, and we're going to have to cope with it as it is. So roll on Christmas. I'd like a break. It would be nice to have some family around and see some friends, but I don't think there's going to be any huge parties, and I think that's a shame. I think the social side of our business is really important for our industry. You know, we all know each other really well, whether it's as customers or on the opposite side of the fence, and it's a shame not to get together and see everybody and to have to do it like this. You know, it's 120 people on the call that would normally be in the same room and having a drink afterwards, which is a real shame. So,
exactly. Still saves any headache in the morning, Ruth, and
that's true. Yeah,
nobody will begrudge you that break over the festive period, and you know, really good practical advice there for everyone. Let's not get the panic buying mentality on, because it will cause everyone more work in the long run. Come to you, Sean. Again, you know, years to come, S&G. You know, how do you sort of, you know, predict that things are going to change for yourself and your role within the sector?
I think it's quite difficult at the moment, simply because we are in a state of flux still, and I don't think we're going to come out of that, you know, state of flux for, you know, a number of months, if not, you know, for a prolonged period. I think in terms of, you know, the actual role itself and what we do for our clients, just look at the last 12 to 24 months, it's changed dramatically. And, you know, one of the things, well, two things that we were talking about was technology and tech, you know, as being an enabler. It is going to change over the next 12, 24 months. You know, we have now ecosystems within the supply chain, whereas we didn't, you know, 12, 24 months ago. So it's changed hugely, and it's going to change even more. You know, I've got an 8-year-old son, and I say to him pretty much daily that he's going to have to change and adapt. He doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about, but I think if he came into this industry and, you know, and into one of these jobs, he would have to realize that, you know, it's a constant state of changing and adapting, because we are all here to do the best for our customers. And if you're not changing and adapting, I don't think you're doing that. Going back to what Ruth said a moment ago about the social side of it, I pray to God that comes back, because, you know, we are all missing that, and everyone within S&G Response is missing that hugely. But, you know, I think we still all have the common goal. That's not going to change, but the job itself, it will move on. It's just hard to say how at the moment, Mark.
No problem at all. And there we go. That rounds things off beautifully for this afternoon's session. So thank you very much indeed for your contributions. I think we're all, the messages coming in. I see Mark Ball's dropped a message in there. He can't wait to get back on the social side. And Mark Ball's done a great piece of work recently. I think the official Trend Tracker report is launched on Monday. So he's your man. And I've had a little bit of an insight into it, and it's full of absolute gems. People listening in, leave your comments, throw some comments in the box for us. Really appreciate your time. Sean, Stuart and Ruth, absolutely fantastic session. Obviously, a huge thank you, as always, to our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams. And, of course, to our partners, Aztec, the Green Parts Specialists in DARSA, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. Thank you once again, Sean, Stuart and Ruth. Absolutely fantastic session, really honest, really insightful. People join the conversation on the LinkedIn group. We'll have a write-up in there in a second and pose some more questions to keep things flowing. ARC360 LinkedIn group, join us there. In the meantime, everybody, take care, and we'll see you all again on Friday. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Thank you.